All right. It's Tuesday again, so kind of this time of the week. We are back, or probably I should say, I am back in this case for another freshly squeezed episode of PKs on Air. Sadly, Dominique is not with me today, but I mean, no worries. You do not have to deal with me solo for like an hour. I actually have someone joining me in just a couple of minutes. That someone is none other than Resignal's CEO, Kevin Gibbons, and we will be talking about a study that they released, I think it was just last week, on a whole bunch of things around e-com. So I think that that fits really well. Also ties in quite nicely with some of the talks that I've been doing in like the last month in various conferences around the globe, most of them being virtual, but also live on stage at SMX in Munich. So yeah, I'm really curious to see and learn a bit more about, like, you know, what has happened behind the scenes. And of course, we're gonna chat about like the key results, obviously, and get kind of Kevin's take on things. Before we do that, as always, just a couple of brief housekeeping notes. So we have the show notes from last week's episode, including the video, including also the slide deck and whatnot, available on the URL below. So pa.ag/notes should give you an overview of all the stuff that we kind of talked about in the previous episode. Of course, same thing for today. So we will afterwards kind of be, you know, sharing, of course, again, the link to the study, which is kind of going to be our main topic. There's also a bunch of other things going on in SEO that I think are somewhat exciting. Google has announced another kind of virtual webmaster conference coming up, as well as, well, a couple of other happenings, still outtakes and outages that seem to happen with Google search in general. Like the whole bunch of volatility, I think, going on around if you look at like the movements and whatnot. So yeah, I think we have a lot to talk about today. We are live on Facebook. I think this time also even we finally seem to have managed to fix this LinkedIn situation, which makes me really happy. At least I don't get the the error messages anymore. So I guess that works. So wherever you are, really, feel free to comment on any of the platforms. That should pop up straight with us, so we can kind of answer all and any comments and questions that you might have, not only on kind of the study, but also, of course, on the show in general. So that would be lovely to see you guys in the chat. And one final thing before I get Kevin in, like we last week talked about some of the things that Dominique has been sharing around kind of internationalization of campaigns. And so next week we will kind of continue this this kind of path. And since we had a bunch of questions coming in also in the course of last week, more around outreach, pre-outreach, and those types of things. So we're going to be discussing that next week. So if you're running not only international, but also like single language or single market campaigns, I think that episode is one not to miss. All right. So without further ado now, let's see if this adding to stream functionality works and we get Kevin in, but I think it actually does. Kevin,
hi,
how
Bastian.
are you?
Yeah,
hey, man.
It
does work indeed. I'm still new to this StreamYard platform, but I have to say they do a really good job with making it easy.
I think once before, and so far pretty good at least.
It's super easy to do, and this is, I think, the most. I mean, we've been playing with like Zoom before, and then obviously OBS, and then all of those things, and like, yeah, I mean, you can do that, but this is just very, very easy. So perfect for the non-tech guy. that works. Anyways, yeah. So I'm very excited that you take the time to join me today, and we can have a bit of a chat around the study that you guys have been doing. Maybe for those of you who don't know you, who is Kevin in 3 sentences? What do we need to know about you?
Yeah, of course. So I run an agency called Resignal. We're based normally in London. Obviously, this is a little bit of a different situation. And specialize purely in SEO and driving organic growth for our clients. And one of our key sectors that we work in is e-commerce, which kind of leads into the reason why we created this piece.
Nice, very nice. And so that all happened in the last weeks, or what was the kind of time frame that you guys have kind of worked on this? Because it's quite huge, right? I'm gonna put it on the screen meanwhile, but
it's been a bit of a summer project for us, honestly, because what we tried to do is bring together 3 different parts that are all quite time consuming in their own right. So the first piece was to get insights and trends for the retail sector, which is, actually I'll talk about it as you scroll down, but the first piece was an interview I did with Paul Martin, who's the UK and actually global head of retail at KPMG. And the reasoning for that was I'm quite often having conversations with marketers and SEO, and search demand is just so driven by the economic situation that we're in right now. And
right.
No offense to marketers, myself included, but they don't know that much about the economy and what's coming in a global pandemic. So I figured let's hear it from KPMG's head of retail, because if anyone's going to know, he kind of is one of the most senior people that is looking into this quite heavily. So there's some interesting stuff there. He's a very busy man, so trying to get a date in the diary is quite time-consuming.
And it's quite a lot. It's quite a long piece as well, right? It's like almost 40 minutes. So you spent quite a bit of time with him.
Yeah, no, he's very generous with his time. We did a write-up afterwards so that everyone can see the key points. And there's a lot of trends that he shared, specifically about the UK market, some of it global. And also looking ahead at what he thinks is coming in 2021 and beyond. I think a lot of the key findings here, we can certainly dig into this, was that a lot of this has been accelerated, as opposed to it's all coming, but it's just the whole situation has just meant that anything that's on, say, a 5 to 7 year roadmap has instantly become a 24 to 36 month roadmap, if not quicker. So
I think that's true for a lot of businesses in general as well, right? I think I recall, like, we on one of the earlier episodes, we also said, well, you know, I mean, some of the clients that we kind of been working with all of a sudden had to like kind of transition their business model into something entirely different, even though they kind of should have known that might happen at some point, as you said. And it's interesting to hear the time frame. It should have been on their radar, and maybe they should have even been like there somehow, or at least to an extent, right? But they just didn't. So yeah, that's interesting. That's
100%. And I think that's the thing of, before you can make excuses and delays, and now it's like, this is the most urgent thing on your plate. Otherwise, that business will, in some cases, suffer. In other cases, actually, that's fatal. So it's certainly been accelerated significantly.
Yeah. So basically, if I understand correctly, and please feel free to kind of correct me at any point in time. So like you outlined, and this is what I just kind of pulled up here, is that you kind of try to answer, I think, some of the common questions that also marketers, or probably not only marketers, but most likely marketers and business owners alike, right, might have at any point in time, right? So this is kind of the general, the bigger concept behind it, right?
Correct. Yeah. So Paul from KPMG was very clear that he's not going to talk about what people are doing from a marketing perspective. That's not
right. Yeah.
He will talk about the trends at KPMG.
Okay. Yeah.
And And likewise, we wanted to make sure the experts weren't the one giving the insights around what's happening with COVID, but more so how are they reacting to their digital marketing activities, specifically within SEO. What does that look like for forecasting, budgeting, prioritization, reporting, etc. And we built some really nice insights that I would say there's some common themes for each of the questions, but actually there's also a mix. There's not a right answer for any one of these questions. Certainly, has your investment increased, stayed the same, or reduced during the pandemic? The answer varies based on which subcategory you're in. If you're in convenience, food, kind of the type of industries that have been doing incredibly well, then it makes sense you're riding that wave. If you're in something that is seen as more of a non-essential good in purchase, then actually budgets might be being cut because people are, through the uncertainty, are saving their money. So it's not a one-fits-all for e-commerce. It's really what is that product that you're trying to sell. And if the demand is bigger, then absolutely try and ride that wave as much as you can.
Absolutely, for sure. Money. So what was the most, like, before we go into it, what was the most surprising thing that you learned, like, before you kind of even maybe were fully done? Like, what was the most surprising thing that came out of it for you personally?
I'm surprised how everyone was very thoughtful about what they were doing. Like, they clearly adapted their strategies. And I feel like sometimes when you talk about SEO in the industry, some people are very set in their ways, and it's kind of, oh, we're not going to change. This is what we planned in January. I kind of always expected people to say, this is fine, we're not going to it. And actually, it's the opposite. It was, no, we're fully aware this is a big issue. We're treating it very seriously, and we're adapting our strategy based upon changing demands, behaviors. And I think maybe I underestimated how people are very quick and agile to do things, but they pleasantly surprised me that they're very on the ball, and they're making decisions and taking action. It's great.
Okay, cool. So maybe just a couple of general things, and then we can like deep dive. So of course, the entire thing is available for free to kind of browse resignal.com/e-commerce SEO report. As I said, I'm going to be sharing that later as well. So as you said, and maybe you can add to it. So you have, like, leading in with this a massive piece with Paul Martin, and then it's kind of two other components with it, right? So you have this the kind of questionnaire, or like the expert's view on certain things, right? And then as the third piece, or the third part, I should probably say, you have like the organic performance data, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we made a clear distinction that these are three separate pieces that, in their own right, they could be one piece. We wanted to bring it together because we think there's different insights from different angles that are important. However, we also decided not to draw the line between each of them. So this is insights about the economy. These are SEO insights, and these are the trends. However, you'll know as well as I will, if you externally review 250 domains and say, this is who's winning and losing, and this is why, you just don't have enough information to make a judgment call on that, because there's so many internal things that will happen that we very quickly decided, we'll show the trends, and we can see this is what's happening for visibility. We're not saying that visibility is revenue, and we're not saying these are winning or losing because they're good or bad at SEO. These are just the facts based on the data that we see.
Understood. And then the data, you said, I think, if I recall correctly, was based on Systrix, right?
It's based on Systrix have provided the data very kindly for this piece. We've categorized it, which honestly is quite tricky, and I don't think it's a 100% perfect way to categorize. We picked one category per brand. Many will fit several, but again, you need to,
especially like the ones like such as Amazon and whatnot, right?
Amazon are in books, but if you compare their visibility to a or Waterstones, then
yeah.
load them out of the water because of the vast amount of products.
Got
so it's very tricky. But at the same time, I think there's some interesting insights here, certainly when you start to subcategorize on who's doing well. There's a lot of caveats that will come with this. Amazon, actually, before the date range, had a big spike. And if you look at their year-on-year progress, they've dropped, but that's because they had a big spike beforehand. So actually, they kind of flattened out, and they are huge in terms of performance. But there's always going to be things like that. The other thing to add, which came up in our questioning, was we based the visibility on mobile visibility. And that was based on Systrix's advice of that's what they look at as being the most reliable source of visibility data. So again, there's different ways you can splice the data. And
I mean, as always, right? I guess that's what it is, really.
Exactly. Yeah, but ultimately, we wanted to understand what's happening in e-commerce and give marketers a sense of you're not in it alone. Like, everyone is in the same situation right now. How is everyone dealing from that? And what can you learn collectively that you can then apply to your own strategy?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess I probably should say that first and foremost. I mean, as I know from other pieces and projects, that's a lot of work, I imagine. Do you mind sharing like how much time you guys invested, just out of curiosity? Because I think it's a lot of work, right? To kind of collect it, review it, like process it in a way, then kind of get the write-ups done. I mean, that's quite a bit of work, I imagine.
Yeah, I feel like this is a good opportunity to give a shout out to Anna, our marketing assistant, because she's done an amazing job at just organizing everything to make it flow. So we've had, I think it was probably a 3 or 4 month Gantt chart of working backwards from launch to, okay, we need to get the interview booked in, we need to collect data, we need to do the creative. And even then, to be honest, last week I've written a notes of these are the things that we should do better next time, because you're never going to get it perfect. But I think just actually organizing each step is pretty difficult for the piece like there. And then the moving parts of design, visuals. We're not going to have all the answers day one. Let's bring it together as you would if it was a client campaign. So we kind of treated it as a client, and then brought all of those pieces together and brought it into a single day as a launch. So last Tuesday, I think. I
was gonna say I think I saw it last Tuesday, a bit before we kind of aired the episode last week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so no, it's a big piece, and I think it's something that we certainly plan on. How do we continually develop and evolve, and also keep the data fresh? Because again, visibility score will change.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? I mean, it's always it's kind of this momentum, and then it's already outdated again. I mean,
and that's the thing. There's other things we considered, which was actually printing this and sending it to people, and then we realized that not that many people are in the office right now, and
fair enough.
Also, like you say, it does go out of date, so we decided to invest more in the design and the visual. Let's make this an online piece. And then we have scope to update it and keep it refreshed.
Yeah. And then, so basically from a like content perspective, so what I have, I mean, the video is clear, and then I think what I can do is I can go into like the different sections, right? And I think you also have it as a PDF if you want it as a PDF, if I'm not totally mistaken.
That's right. The PDF download is essentially all of this information in a PDF, but some people prefer to
just different format, basically. What were like? So let's pick one of them. What do you think is the one that we should have a look at? I found like the obviously the activity. I mean, coming from a more practitioner kind of standpoint, that is what I always find exciting. So maybe we just start with that, and then you got to pick one.
Yes. Good.
But I found it quite interesting that, as you said as well, like people gave it a lot. It felt like a lot, not just some, a lot of thought actually on like what is happening and what should they do and how should they adapt, right? Was there anything that stood out specifically for you?
I think it's just relevant to their situation. So again, certainly they have stores. Those are the brands that have underlying issues that are a pure play e-commerce. Then yes, you might have issues with suppliers and stock, but not to the level that you would if you have, let's say, 200 odd stores that are shut down or very empty. And certainly updating Google Local and automation.
I was going to say, I mean, it's just a discipline in itself changed quite a bit, right? This is, I think, what we also noticed a lot. I mean, for us, it was even like cross-channel changes, obviously, not like only looking at SEO, because I mean, we do like, SEO and paid and whatnot as well. So for us, it was also like, how can we assist our clients in the best possible way with, no matter what the channel borders are, if that makes any sense. And I think for those guys, it's kind of a bit the same, right? Because I mean, as you said, like search demand could have gone up or down, or the behavior itself just changed, right? And I think reacting to that makes a lot of sense, but it's also not always easy.
It does, and I think the one thing that's reassuring to me, and sometimes I get a little disillusioned with the SEO industry in terms of the type of activity people focus on, and I think the good thing in this pandemic, if you can say you can take positives from it, is that focus on actually where does business value come from within your SEO strategy, and you're not just saying, oh, let's do this because it'd be fun, or let's even technical. Let's not just fix these technical issues because there's an error in Search Console. It's more about what's your focus from a business perspective. Where do you make money? And then I'm not saying you shouldn't fix issues, you shouldn't run campaigns, etc. It's got to start with a business goal in mind. And I think right now, that level of focus that you have on, wait a minute, what's really important here to drive as much business value as you can. I think it just brings you back to that. And sometimes I think people do need a bit of a wake-up call in the sense of why are you doing this? And
I was going to say, it goes kind of a bit back to what you were saying earlier with like the interview that kind of resulted in saying, well, they had it coming in quotation marks, right? It's kind of the same thing. But quick question in between, because we are at that already anyways. Like, I mean, you guys run similar to Dominique's team, like a whole bunch of different campaigns every year for a variety of clients, and internationally, sometimes just single language. Did you guys have to change a lot, or did you proactively decide to change campaigning, content-wise, strategy-wise, just on a generic level, if you can share?
Yeah, I feel like we've already changed our approach, and the approach to that is more tactical in the sense. And this is my experience. I think everyone kind of has their own story and a right or wrong. But in my experience, building campaigns that get links to a campaign to improve call it domain authority or what you like, but overall one's link reputation, are very hard to measure the impact of SEO to. And what I found is being more tactical. So maybe picking a top of funnel awareness keyword or topic, and then building authority around that topic, I found has been something that we provide more value to our clients with, as opposed to here's a PR news hook, let's jump on it and get lots of links and attention. I find that's great for PR. I'm not sure it's actually as good for SEO as some people believe, certainly in my experience. And our approach has shifted more towards let's prove the measurable impact of we're getting top of funnel awareness and customers coming into the site. And then it has real value. And I feel like that lends well to the situation, because we're still talking about attracting customers as opposed to getting PR attention.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that describes it quite nicely, because the biggest issue that most of them are facing is that like links as a metric is not sufficient anymore, I would say. I mean, that might be the end goal, but that can't be all, for sure. In our experience,
and I feel like links shouldn't be the end goal. I feel like links should be the how you do it, but the end goal should
kind
be
of fair enough. fair enough. But I think we're talking about the same thing. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's that's totally true. And I think that step, as you said, if you have kind of done that before or like somewhat meanwhile either way, then you would not, because that was something that I kind of asked Dominique as well from an operational perspective. It's like, how, like, did we have to change, or did you guys decide to change? And she said kind of the same. Well, I mean, except for, of course, some topics where it would have been like just not reasonable at the time to run that from a content perspective per se, because you're like, no, that's just not a good time to talk about that specific topic. That was the only thing that where we like said, well, yeah, that maybe is not the best time to do it then. But other than that, I would agree.
Yeah, the trends, and I would say this is what we saw, but it certainly come from the experts as well, is that there's a balance between, you can't jump on the COVID bandwagon and look like
exactly. Yeah,
crazy, but you also can't ignore it, and you can't pretend that the world is 2019 and if it's normal. So there's a balance between being empathetic to the situation, aware of what's going on around you, but not trying to jump on that bandwagon and milk it for everything that you can as well.
Yeah. No, true. And I think it's also like it's a very small path in regards of being still like a trusted source, because I'm by far not an expert on COVID. So like jumping on the COVID topic itself, I think is also, that can be quite dangerous. But you're right. I mean, you don't want to ignore it in the regard of that it has an impact. So it just matters how you tie it in, right? I think this is kind of what it comes down to. Yeah.
Exactly. The other thing that we found from this piece that I thought was really interesting is that SEO is getting attention at the board level for two reasons. One is that it drives revenue, and it's quite often the largest, if not one of the largest channels in terms of driving revenue. And in situations like this, you focus even more on what's working for you. The other is the trends and the insights that you get. So sometimes you will see the demands that people are searching for products, or travel is a good example as well, where people might not be ready to book a flight, but if they're searching for destinations and you see a spike, that at the board level they can then see that and say, okay, well, people are now starting to improve their demand in terms of the research. However, you'll see that before you'll actually see an impact to sales. So you can almost see what's coming through SEO insights, which I think is really interesting in terms of how you prepare as a business.
Yeah, makes sense. That's true. I think that's, as you said, like going back to this, what really works for you, I think makes total sense. Again, kind of reflects of what we've been seeing kind of from the client side that kind of they asked us to do as well, which I think makes sense. So let's have a chat a bit about, like, you know, because this is also one answer that one section that I found quite interesting. So, you know, have you changed, and if so, how, like, you forecast the expected results within the business? So what were your takes on this? I mean, I like the first answer. This is kind of why I brought it up, and I could recall like when Julian said this, I was really laughing, actually.
I like this, and I also think you'll get what I'm going to say from an agency perspective. But the challenge in-house is absolutely, you don't want to overpromise. The challenge on the agency side is under-promise, over-deliver doesn't always work, because you might lose the pitch. And sometimes you need to have a bit of ambition about what you say you're going to do in order to get buy-in. But obviously, you don't want to promise the world if you can't achieve it. But I think if you do have that luxury of saying, let's downplay what we think we can achieve, and then excite people when you overachieve that afterwards, that's very good. But there is a balance, and it depends how much power you have and influence within that organization. But
and if it's something that you have been doing before, or if it's something that's kind of new to the organization as well, right? Or if there's a change of like responsibilities and reporting lines, because then you might also reconsider that. I can totally relate with that. I guess what I've been seeing, at least in the last 8 weeks, I think we have never, as an agency, has never done so many pitches, and having to deal with like so many like RFPs and whatnot, which I'm, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm very, very thankful for, because I think this is also like a really good sign of, I wouldn't say things coming back to normal, but at least that some of the businesses haven't been impacted, at least for now, as hard as some people might have thought. So they can kind of continue to invest in their own like marketing efforts as well. But what I was trying to say is that I think it's still true that like you need to provide as a service provider, you need to provide like this reassurance on a reasonable level, right? I think, as you said, like it's a fine line of like going crazy because you need the buy-in and then you can't deliver versus, well, let's kind of try to make it that it looks decent, but then just try to over deliver on that. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has been, for some of our clients, we've tried to map out what's the market trend versus what's SEO performance. So if we can see, this is where stuff like Systrix is very good from a visibility perspective. Because if you're staying relative to your competitors in the same position, you can, I would say quite safely, not 100%, assume that your SEO performance is staying flat, but the market demand is going up or down along that. And I think it's really important to use external benchmarking at this point in time to see how well are you doing relative to the market, and what is it that's a market trend as opposed to where you've improved SEO performance. So, like in theory, if your rankings have stayed the same across the board, or at least very close to that, then any increase or decrease is probably down to the change in demand. So the important thing of just adding that context around not just forecasting, but also reporting.
Yeah, I agree. But it, again, kind of goes back to, and it's funny that we oftentimes touch on this topic somehow, like the transparency and like not relying on a single metric, right? I mean, of course you have something that might be your single source of truth, if that makes even any sense, and something that you use as kind of the baseline. But as you said very much correctly, I think, especially in times that are more volatile, then you need something else than just your own kind of data points, because even if traffic is going up and down or whatever, if you don't see how the market develops in this case, I think it's entirely worthless because of the volatility and also the significant like difference in this year in comparison to any other year-over-year comparison that you would ever have made, right? Because it's broken, essentially. This is what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of, this is the one thing I was thinking about in early lockdown is, what do you compare this against? There's no SEO trends that you can look at the last pandemic from Spanish flu.
Spanish,
It's just like this. In the online world, this hasn't really happened at all before. And you're talking about how to look forwards when looking backwards doesn't help that much. So yeah, it's a very tricky situation. So I think the right answer in this case, as most of the experts gave, is reforecasting and just keeping on top of the rapidly changing situation.
Yeah, very true. And then I think the other one that, and this is funny because we had it, like, so I'm not going to go into this, but like metrics is one thing that you kind of talked about as well. And then I think what I also found interesting is this one. So like, has your SEO investment increase stayed kind of the same or reduced during the pandemic? And I think when you go through the answers, you could kind of see the same thing, right? There's not kind of one answer, which was to be expected, because again, then it's like, you know, depending on what are they retailing, what are they selling and whatnot, but also like it's very much bound to specific intervals, right? So, and I think we from an agency perspective saw the same thing, right? So in like early March, early April, you had like a lot of kind of paid search budget like being put on pause for various reasons, or at least kind of being decreased. And in SEO, it came later because like usually we had this like 8 to 10 weeks lead time of projects, and then, you know, at some point, like because new business wasn't signed in March, then of course like in May you had this. So I think the curves for everyone will look like somewhat different, right?
It definitely will. I mean, the answer to that question of has it increased, stayed the same, or reduced is all of the above, and it just depends on that specific brand. But I think one of the interesting things that wasn't actually touched upon here, but just kind of thinking about how this connects the dots with the KPMG side of things is the fact that in the UK, furlough is unwinding at the end of August, end of October, and I think there's a new scheme that may be replacing that, but certainly at the same level. And that means if you look at this from an in-house perspective, there might be teams that have people on furlough and they now need to make a decision on do they bring that person back or make that person redundant. And, I think that will impact potentially whether they're one side or the other.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Do they then focus on growth and investing, or actually, although the plan was to bring people back, it hasn't materialized and they're going to have to make cuts? So I think some of the decisions to maybe stay the same may have been a temporary decision when you have the light
pending on the government backing as well. Yeah, I know from our, like, that's kind of the same for our mother company in France, where also like the government scheme kind of has a kind of certain time frame, and then they just need to kind of decide on, like, you know, what is kind of the best way to deal with it. I mean, if that is even anything like that. And Germany were relatively quick to kind of extend it even further. So, which is also, I guess, an interesting part to the answer, because your data, maybe just to clarify, is obviously UK data. So I think the other interesting aspect, and even though that is, I think, a lot of stuff that's applicable on a more, like, at least European or let's say global level, there's probably, and this is like an interesting bit to it, I think, there's always, of course, like country specifics that also people kind of need to consider, right?
Oh, definitely. One thing I found quite interesting actually is when we looked into the data, some of the department stores, you had the likes of Nordstrom and JCPenney actually have strong UK organic visibility that I really wouldn't have considered. When you think of department stores in UK, you think of John Lewis, Debenhams, House of Fraser, Marks and Spencer, etc. I would not think of the big US department stores. Target.com is a good example of. I'd think of them more as a UK, a US brand as opposed to UK.
True. Yeah, you're right. JCPenney's in here as well.
Yeah, I think we might have removed Nordstrom, but they were certainly a lot stronger than I would have expected from a UK visibility perspective.
It's so any plans? I mean, that's probably obviously the follow-up question. Any plans to internationalize this thing or no?
Well, I mean, to be honest, we've got a few ways we could go with it that we're trying to decide. One is internationalize. Two is extend. It's amazing how 250 domains really isn't that many when you get to a category level. Actually, like there's so much more you could add. That 250 when we started this project sounded like a lot, and when we finished it, it was just like there's so many we left out that we could add to this. So internationalize is another one. There's also other sectors that we could go deeper into. We had some questions around where do you draw the line? Like eBay and Gumtree are potentially more classified as opposed to
I see.
Again, you've got to draw the line somewhere, but it doesn't mean that I think we've got to collect our thoughts on how do we improve it next time, or do we go down a slightly different route?
Fair enough.
But there's so many ways you could take it that it's a big project, but we definitely want to.
I bet.
We want to improve it.
So I mean, that's probably the follow-up question. I mean, do you guys even have time to do it, right? I guess, I mean, as an agency, there's always client work, at least usually.
I think similar to yourselves, we experienced in the early days of lockdown. Actually, I don't know if it's similar to yourself, but certainly where you're talking about being very busy right now. We were very quiet in the early days of lockdown. It's kind of like, let's pull together, let's do a marketing piece, and let's think about what would add value to the
makes sense.
audience. And then we got to a point of actually things are really picking up, and we have to launch a marketing campaign.
Yeah, we haven't done it yet. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same with us. I mean, this one is obviously a result of like which we started in the early times of lockdown. So PK's on there kind of was born out of that necessity and reason, I guess. Also, yeah, similar. We kind of like we never, which is also quite funny if you think about it, we never did any like advertising for ourselves. So. Right. Yeah, we now even run PPC campaigns. Go figure. So that was an interesting exercise to kind of do a lot of like the internal marketing stuff that we ever kind of put on pause. Like, you know, be that a proper implementation with Salesforce or, you know, all of those things. So yeah, we kind of invested a lot of internal time as well. So to you guys, I guess.
Yeah, it's a typical. I don't know if this will mean as much to you in German, but kind of like the cobbler's shoes situation.
Yeah, we have a similar saying in German. Yeah,
and it really is like marketing agencies are the worst at doing their own marketing because you focus on your clients and your own projects.
Yeah,
typically become an afterthought. But I think for us, actually having our own marketing manager to organise this helped a lot, because otherwise it really is everything slips because we need to be doing a good job for our clients first and foremost.
I was gonna say it's clients first, right? So you can't even blame anyone or the team or whatever. That's what I'm always saying to our guys as well. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, clients always go first. So you can't even be mad about it.
It has to be that. That's what you're here for. So if you're
true.
And yeah, if you look great externally but you can't deliver internally, that's not a good situation to be in. So
yeah, very, very true. But I think when we talked to the team about that, so like it's also an interesting exercise to do some things for yourself, because you can somewhat like refresh and redo and renew some of the knowledge. Like we've been playing a lot with like integrations, you know, Salesforce, Unbounds, and the likes, and like some really. I mean, if you know, I've been like talking about web performance for ages at conferences, but like our website is so shit. It's absolutely it's unreal. And then we kind of had this project that we like made all of our landing pages like ridiculously fast. So it's always like quite interesting to see like the real world challenges next to theory, really, which you always talk about. Yeah,
I've completely seen this from the client side. So. I'd rather you didn't look at the source code for our e-commerce guide, but it doesn't look very good. And I'll put it that way, which is a nice way of saying it. Our next stage is how do we stop pulling information from a Google sheet that loads very slowly and actually have that content indexed properly on the page and everything. But at the same time, the purpose of this is to get it out there and to launch. The SEO value is secondary. And that's something that we certainly want to fix and get right. But it's made me see from a client perspective of, okay, let's prioritize timelines, deadlines, do what it takes, and fix the stuff that is nice to have but not 100% essential for launch. And
can happen afterwards. Yeah. Very true. Very true. It's funny that you mentioned that. Like I meant to ask you, and actually also meant to say my congratulations, because I mean, you guys were also very, very successful with some of the campaigns in the last month in a whole bunch of awards. I think that was really nice. I think one of the ones that stood out to me was the work you guys have been doing for ASICs, right? I think that was. One of your very, I mean, I'm not saying but like one of the very successful campaigns in recent days, right? Or work, not campaigns necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been working with ASICs for 2 years, and
really cool.
We've had some significant results in terms of organic revenue growth. So that's been a really nice one to definitely get our teeth sunk into and do some good
work.
It's
similar to what you were saying, right? I mean, if you don't show it, and that can be kind of awards or whatever else, right? Then how are people supposed to know, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's been the way we've always approached things. Do great work for clients first, and then if we can showcase that through case studies and awards, and it feels like the natural progression of that. But yeah, congratulations to you guys as well. I feel like your name was announced a lot of times at the
We try to keep up with you guys. Yeah, very true. No, I mean, it's the same story, right? We kind of do it the same. We have the same approach to that. I mean, we always try to kind of first and foremost build something of value, and like we've been working with. Like one of the campaigns that was quite successful for us, and actually in multiple years in a row now, is one that we did for a German company called Kartenmacherei, which is like a greeting cards, wedding invitation cards, and those types of things shop. And similar to what you've been saying, like we never just solely focused on that one campaign, but rather have like an effort throughout the year, through the seasonality, with like different kind of initiatives, and then the overall goal is just ROI, or essentially revenue, and that seemed to have worked quite well. But I think it also at the same time is really cool to see, because for like, I mean, sometimes, I mean, at least from our perspective, I mean, we do love all our clients, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys, but sometimes things just take longer and it's more like admin work. And for some, you can really get like moving very, very fast and get some stuff done quickly. And that's one of those clients where that is actually the case. And then it's just, it's kind of phenomenal to see the output, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the key thing. It's like, how do you build on the last one, as opposed to it being a spike that disappears and then you have to do it all again. It's like, how do you compound interest effect of you're building something that lasts, and then you can build something else that lasts, and
and the team like naturally feels like an extension, right? I think this is also what we felt is like super important, to just not have this, well, yeah, there's this agency, and you know, this is the in-house team, and then I think that that never really results in the best possible output. I think this is just what I always feel. Yeah, very nice. Wow, time is flying and running fast when you have fun, as they say. So I think we're already at 45 minutes. Insane. So I had this. I had to promise that I'm not again overrun over the 45 minutes. So I get an angry email afterwards, I'm sure. We need to finish this. Kevin, thank you very, very much. Highly appreciate it. Again, congratulations. Really, really cool piece of work. I will be adding it. We will be adding it to the show notes, of course, so that people can poke around. I'm sure you guys are on socials. If there's any questions, we will kind of forward them your way. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. No matter where you kind of were watching, highly appreciate you taking the time. It was good fun. We will be back next week, same time, so 4 p.m. on Tuesday. PK is on air. We'll be back with, well, as I said, we're trying to go down the road and provide some ideas and concepts and thoughts around how you can make your outreach a bit better. I think Kevin agrees, an important topic if you want to get any campaign with any coverage going well. So this is going to be fun. I hope to see you all there. And with that, we are out. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, Bastian.